It's changed a lot because when I first started, we were our own trainers. We didn't have trainers, and we're very fortunate now to have athletic trainers. But we had to go to conferences to learn, and one instance came to my mind in the late 80s. We had a young man that ended up with a heat stroke, and we as coaches had him. We were icing him down. We'd put him in an ice bath. Had ice on all the pressure points, and then the paramedics came in as we were going to transport him, and they took the ice off, and they didn't even know the right protocol. But we had studied to know that, and it ended up basically, I feel like, helped saving the young man's life. And then, of course, what we found out later is this young man had taken, he was in great shape because he was going to be recruited, and ended up having a great career at Southern Miss. But he felt like he was getting a cold, and he had taken something like an antihistamine to clear up the cold. And when the doctor finally came in and talked to his mother, says, he'd been on any kind of antihistamine? He said, yes. I don't know, it was contact, one of those antihistamine, because he felt like he was getting a cold. He said, well, his antihistamine level is off the chart. And that didn't dawn on me, but antihistamine dries you up. And you're out practicing in the heat, that makes it even worse. And the doctor said he was about 25 times more susceptible to having heat problems. And so next thing we did was trying to find out who was on any kind of antihistamine. And also, you think about a lot of kids that are in teenagers, they're on stuff for acne, which dries up the skin. So we had to be, and that's the first I'd been to all these clinics and never heard that. And next thing you know, it starts coming out about you got to be careful what kids on antihistamine. So you have to try to stay ahead of the game. And thank goodness we have trainers that now that really help us with that. Well, we contact parents, and we talk to the kids, and they list any medications they're on. And we're, the trainer, he looks, and then of course red flag comes up if he sees somebody on some kind of antihistamine or something to dry up the skin, and such as for acne or whatever. And so we're very aware of that before we even start. And we try to be as proactive as we can on that. And of course, we still go to clinics to learn about this, and our trainer constantly is updating himself to anything that's he needs to be aware of. Before, it was our emergency action plan was us going to clinics, and we knew what we needed to do if somebody had a problem. And now we have the trainer, and we have our emergency action plan, and it's transferred over into all areas, whether it's a practice or a game or anything like that. We have one for every sport and for every venue we have. It's always been the number one priority, and as much as I believe in athletics, as much as I believe in the values that football teaches, health and safety is the number one thing. And we leave it up to our doctors and our trainer to let us know if someone does not need to practice, does not need to play. That's totally left up to them, because they're the ones that know more about whether a young man or young lady is would be able to do the things we're asking them to do. And that's our main goal, is their health and safety. Well, I have to go back to my background. My dad was a high school coach, and I grew up under Mutt Reynolds, hired me, and he was like my second dad, and he's very much like my dad as far as his approach to the game. And one of his main emphasis, as well as my dad's main emphasis, he wanted to put a young man out there in the safest protective equipment he could. And my dad would go to extra expense on helmets, and so would Coach Reynolds, and same thing with shoulder pads. And Coach Reynolds, I learned from him every year that you take every helmet you have, and no matter if it was used one day or if it was used the whole season, you recondition each one of them, and then let them know whether that needs to be replaced with a new one or not. But you take care of the protective equipment. You might not have the flashiest game pants or game jerseys, but you spend your money on the protective wear. And that's one thing that we do, and I think is very important. The most important thing to do is recondition each one of our helmets, and any shoulder pads that need to be reconditioned. We do that every year, because you can't put a dollar mark on protection of a kid's head, and that's one thing is have that helmet reconditioned by a certified reconditioner, and then they will also let you know if that helmet needs to be replaced. Then you replace that helmet, and after that you're built in a system of how many helmets you replace each year, and I think that is utmost. And we've taken it a step further. We put our kids in guardian caps, and I'm not advertising for guardian caps, but after that first year and I saw the guardian caps that we were putting on our linemen and linebackers and people like that, those extra pads will be totally torn up. Not necessarily the receivers or defensive back, people like that, but those guardian caps for the linemen were, and that's a lot of hits that normally would not that would be cut down. So I'm a firm believer in that, and of course we actually change them out some during the year for those guys.
You know, getting the head out of football is paramount for us. I mean, we have done everything we can to protect our players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, by implementing what Pete Carroll would call the hawk tackling system. It is a rugby way of tackling, and it's what the Seattle Seahawks have been teaching for about 3 years. And we started 2 years ago teaching tackling that way, and it's totally opposite of what we were grown up to teach as far as tackling. I mean, you know, tackling, you're always taught to, you know, broad shoulder tackle, get the head across the bow and run your feet and all that stuff. All of this is tackle is the head stays out of it. The head stays behind the body, and you wrap and roll. And we got that a couple of years ago from them. We've been teaching that for 2 years now. That just finding every way possible to allow your kids to be effective without putting them in danger is paramount for us. Well, they came to follow us around to look at our heat protocol, what we do in the summer during the heat of the day, how many water breaks we take, what kind of personnel we have at practice, to see that we have a full-time certified athletic trainer at every practice, every workout. We also have a team of student trainers that she's developed over the last 11 years. So every group on the field actually has a trainer with them, or a student trainer with them, with water all the time. So they get water constantly. We take a water break in practice every 15 minutes in spite of the fact that they're getting water constantly. You know, it's obviously different than when Coach Anderson coached and when I played, you know, back in those days. You know, staying on top of that, you know, coaches' education, coaches being able to recognize when a kid is a little woozy on his feet, rocking back and forth side to side, to get him to the trainer. I mean, you know, again, you know, it is an overused phrase, but we are still in this to, you know, develop young men, young husbands, young, you know, fathers, develop them and help teach them life skills, not just win ball games. And it has never been about that. And I'm very proud of the things that are in place at Davis and how educated our staff is. You know,
are you still able to
right?
tackle?
You know, we're able to tackle. I think the biggest thing was we really haven't had a concussion issue. 11 years, we've had 6 concussions. Now, I think a lot of that goes to how we've practiced. You know, a lot of the new practice protocol that's going into place in the state, we've been doing for 11 years. I mean, it's, you know, we were ahead of the curve in that. I mean, you know, and it's different to me. The practice protocol rules are tougher on small schools. When you've got kids that have got to play both ways, and you've got to figure out a way to get this guy enough work as an offensive lineman and enough work as a linebacker, but you can't have contact on consecutive days, that's tough on them small schools. Now, 7A, 6A school, you have enough numbers to be able to practice without having to do that. But we haven't gone to the ground on a daily basis in 11 years. You know, full speed contact without a predetermined winner in 11 years, except for about 2 days a week. You know, so we've had 6 concussions in 11 years. 4 of those were in games. Most of them were knee to helmet in piles. 4 of the 6 were a knee hitting a kid in the head down in a pile in a scrum. It was not a technical, a head-to-head type thing. I mean, that just doesn't happen very often. And you know, the hawk tackling though has helped us in terms of shoulder and neck injuries. You know, these kids getting their head across and the big old running back. You know, I mean, 235-pound running backs that run 4.5 now, and like you were talking a while ago about a DB who don't want to tackle that guy. Well, I wouldn't want to tackle him either. You know, and the hawk tackling allows them to pick a side, tackle behind them, grab them, and roll them, and not look less courageous than they really are. And so it has helped us there, but especially with neck injuries. I've seen a lot less kids in the training room getting their necks iced after games once we implemented the hawk tackling. You know, both my sons are on the team at Davidson. The safest place in the state of Alabama for a teenager to be is on a practice field or a playing field with our coaches. I mean, we have all this rigmarole about sports and safety and all that, but a kid can pass a test in driver's ed now. That he gets a card and he can go turn that card in at the Department of Safety and now go drive a missile out on the interstate at 80 miles an hour, and we don't think nothing of it, but we act like our children aren't safe playing public school sports or playing sports in general. That's ridiculous. The safest place our kids in this state are on the fields, in the gyms, you know, in the arenas with us, and with people that care about them, people that are I mean, you don't do what we do for a living and not care about kids. I mean, it's you know, we all have our competitive nature, but first and foremost, we want to invest in their lives, and it's the safest place in this state is to be with a coach. This has always been, I mean, from the time I played high school sports, I was coached by professionals. I mean, and folks tend to not, we grow up in a state where in an era where everybody thinks they're a coach. You know, everybody has a shirt on that says coach on the back of it, so that means they are a coach. But the true professionals in this state are the ones that do it for a living in our schools, and it's always been that way in this state. We've been coached by, I've been coached by professional people my entire life. People that know what they're supposed to do and stay on top of or cutting edge educationally. They always have been, and it just gets better and better.